My name is Raymond Carter Nolan. I'm 91 years old. I was born in the Flats, on the outskirts of Atlanta, in a Georgia that still smelled of red clay and borrowed time. I built two companies, made enough money to get my name in the papers, lost it all twice, and today I live in a simple little room in Livingston, Tennessee, with a rocking chair on the porch and a collection of silences that no fortune could ever buy. I'm not telling you this out of vanity. I'm telling you this because I don't have any more time to waste pretending the path I chose was the right one. When I was a boy, my father, Sebastian Carter, was a loader at the Sweet Auburn Market. He'd leave before the rooster crowed and come back late into the night. I slept in the same bed as my brother Gilbert and would hear my mother praying softly in the next room, not out of faith, but out of desperation. The prayer of someone counting pennies on the table and asking for a miracle to make rent. When I was 12, my father slipped on a wet ramp with a sack of flour on his back. He broke his ankle and couldn't work for 3 months. I remember the look on my mother's face during that time. It wasn't sadness. It was shame. It's the kind of silence a child never forgets. That day, I made a promise to myself. A silent promise, hard as stone. My family would never go hungry because of bad luck. My wife would never have that look in her eyes. My son would never grow up with that weight on his shoulders. I didn't know, at 12 years old, that this promise wasn't born from strength. It was born from fear. And fear is a terrible architect. I started working early. I sold Cokes on the street, delivered ice by bicycle in the summer, and taught myself accounting in a night class where I slept more than I studied. At 25, I moved to New York City on a bus that took 32 hours and arrived in the middle of the night. I had a fake leather suitcase, $200 in my pocket, and a conviction that seems almost childish to me now. I was going to make it. At 31, I opened my first company, a building supply distributor in Queens. I worked like a man possessed, 16, 18 hours a day. I got there before the employees and left after the security guard. I slept with an order book on my nightstand. I was proud of it. I called it grit. I called it being a Southern boy who doesn't bend. It was just blindness by another name. By the time I turned 40, I had my first million. By 50, I had a corporate group with branches in 3 states. My picture was in a Georgia business magazine. My mother cut out the page and put it in a picture frame. That made me cry back then. Today, I cry for very different reasons. My wife's name was Bernadette. Bernie, I called her. A woman from rural Georgia. A farmer's daughter, with steady hands and eyes that missed nothing. She waited for years. She waited for me to come home before 10 at night. She waited for me to sit at the dinner table without my phone next to me. She waited for me to ask how she was, really was, not like someone asking a routine question before talking about work. We had 2 children, Marlene and David. I missed Marlene's first steps. I was in a meeting in Philadelphia. David won the swimming championship when he was 12. I remember it to this day because Bernie called me emotional, and I picked up halfway through the call, said, "That's great, son," and hung up because a client was waiting. That's great. 40 years later, that phrase still bleeds. I used to tell them, "Dad's doing this for you." I said it so often I ended up believing it. But it was a lie. I was doing it for me. For the scared little boy from the flats who saw his mother praying softly in the dark. I was buying peace of mind from a store that didn't sell it. It sold the illusion of control. Because money doesn't cure fear. It just numbs it for a while. But the fear is still there, waiting. In 1998, a bad bet on a state government contract left me with debts that took me 6 years to pay off. I rebuilt. Because I was stubborn, because I confused stubbornness with character. I worked even harder, traveled even more, grew even more distant. And in 2009, I discovered that my partner of 12 years, Everett Landon, had been embezzling from the company for at least 3 years. 3 different people warned me, an accountant, my daughter Marlene, and even my brother Gilbert, who knew nothing about business but understood that Everett couldn't look you in the eye. My pride wouldn't let me listen. I thought they were just jealous. I thought I was the one with the vision, and they just couldn't see it. The result? Bankruptcy. Lawsuits, debt, the second fall. All that sacrifice, All those missed dinners, all those postponed promises, all those nights away from home, they offered no protection at all. The money was gone again, and along with it, what little I still had at home finally shattered. Bernie died in 2015 from a heart attack the doctor said had been coming for years. Stress, he said. Chronic high blood pressure. She never told me she was feeling sick. I never really asked. Today, Marlene is 63 and lives in Charlotte. She calls me on Father's Day and Christmas. 10-minute conversations. We talk about the weather, the grandkids, things that don't hurt. 8 years ago, she told me something while sitting right here on this porch with a voice so calm that the calm hurt more than a scream. Dad, I grew up without a father. You were here, but you weren't here. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to list everything I paid for, everything I built, everything I sacrificed. But deep down, I knew. I had always known. I was always somewhere else, even when my body was in the room. David is in Los Angeles. It's been longer since David called. I stopped pushing for it because pushing reminded me that I was the one who taught him distance in the first place. You know what I remember most clearly here at 91? It's not the deal that saved the company in 97. It's not the newspaper headline. It's not the car I bought when I made my first million. I remember a Sunday afternoon in 1984. Marlene was 7 and had drawn a picture of a boat on the ocean. She'd never seen the ocean up close. She drew it from her imagination. I came home early that day, a rare thing, and she showed me the drawing with that joy only a child has, a joy that asks for nothing in return, only to be seen. I sat on the living room floor with her for almost 2 hours. No rush, no phone, no agenda, just her, me, and that imaginary boat. That memory is worth more than anything I've ever signed. If this story is hitting home for you, make sure to subscribe to our channel and let us know what city you're watching from in the comments. Let's keep going. I promise you, this is going to be the most important story you'll ever hear. Out of almost a century of life, what really remains fits into just a few hours of true presence. The rest is just noise. There was also pride. That was a quiet poison. I never asked for help, never admitted I was wrong, never said, I don't know. I thought vulnerability was weakness. It was arrogance disguised as courage. It was that pride that kept me from listening when they warned me about Everett. It was that same pride that delayed apologies I should have made decades earlier. Swallowing your pride hurts, but living with regret hurts much more, and for much longer. You, reading this, probably have someone next to you who could use 5 minutes of your real attention. Your child waiting for you to ask how their day was and to actually listen, not just pretend. Your wife, your husband, your mother slowly getting used to your absence. You believe you have time. I believe that too. Time doesn't warn you when it's starting to run out. It just passes, quietly, constantly, and without asking permission. Nobody on their deathbed regrets not closing one more deal. Nobody cries because they didn't answer more emails. What hurts is discovering that the simple moments, the ones that seemed postponable, were the very things holding everything together. I would trade every deal I ever closed for a few more years of quiet conversation with Bernie in the kitchen. I would trade every business trip for more dinners with my children. I would give anything to have come home at 6 p.m. instead of 10 p.m. To say, just one more time, work can wait. I can't go back. You can. If I could live it all over again, and I think about this in my rocking chair every afternoon, I would still work. I would still build. A Southern boy doesn't run from hard work, that's true, but I would set boundaries that were non-negotiable. Family dinner would be sacred. Vacations wouldn't be a luxury. They'd be a commitment. I would learn to say no to the market and yes to the person in front of me. I'd apologize sooner. I'd listen more. I'd be less impressive and more present. So I ask you a simple but brutally honest question. Is what you're chasing worth the risk of losing the people you love? Because you might make the money. You might even win the recognition. But if you lose connection, presence, and intimacy in the process, the final balance will be negative. And it's a balance that no financial recovery can ever fix. I'm already at the end of my road. I've made peace with a lot of things. I still carry the weight of what I didn't do. I'm not here to blame you. I'm here to give you clarity. Success that ignores relationships isn't success. It's emotional compensation dressed up as achievement. When you finish reading this, don't go right back to work. Don't open another app. Go to someone you love. Sit next to them. Look them in the eye. Ask how their day was and really listen. Give them a long hug. Tell them you love them and be present when you say it. Don't wait until you're 91 to discover what really matters. I've already walked this path. You can still choose another. There's a letter in the drawer of my nightstand that I wrote 15 years ago and never sent. It's for David. I wrote it one night in March, after a dream where he was 6 years old and waiting for me at the gate with a rubber ball in his hand. In the dream, I came home and walked right past him, not out of malice, not on purpose. I just didn't see him. He just stood there at the gate holding the ball, watching my car disappear into the garage, and he didn't say a word. Children in dreams rarely speak. They just watch. And the look in David's eyes in that dream was enough to wake me up at 3 in the morning with my chest so tight it felt like I'd been running. I wrote the letter in those early hours, 6 pages by hand, an old man's shaky handwriting, full of things I never had the courage to say out loud. I never sent it because every time I open the envelope to reread it, I find an excuse to wait a little longer. Maybe the right moment, maybe when he calls, maybe when I'm stronger. Today, I know that the right moment doesn't exist. It's just fear by another name, the same childhood fear that guided my entire life and still hasn't completely gone away. David was born in 1967, 2 years after Marlene. He was a quiet, observant boy, the kind who stands in the corner studying the room before approaching. Very different from me. I was always the type to walk into a room already talking, already proposing, already convincing. He would enter slowly, take everything in, and when he finally spoke, he'd say something worth more than everything I had said before. I didn't know how to value that when he was a child. I confused his quietness with a lack of ambition. Once, when he was about 15, he told me he wanted to be a history teacher. I heard that and did what a busy, self-assured father does. I told him he needed to think about something more practical, something that made real money. I spoke with the authority of a man who had built a company from scratch and thought that gave him the right to define success for everyone else. David didn't argue. He just looked at me with those calm eyes and said, "Okay, Dad." He ended up getting a business degree. He never told me if it was out of conviction or submission. I never asked. That's one of the things in the letter in the drawer, the apology for confusing my story with his, for thinking that because I had suffered to get where I was, I had the right to map out the path for those I loved. I didn't. I never did. There's an afternoon I can't forget. It was in 1993. David was 26, already working at the company with me, and he invited me to lunch. Just the two of us, no business talk, no agenda. He said he wanted to talk. I accepted, but the moment we got to the restaurant, I got a call from an important client in Chicago. I took it. I was on the phone for 40 minutes while David sat at the table, staring at his glass of water. When I hung up, he was different, not angry. David was never visibly angry. He was closed off, with a quietness that was no longer his contemplative, curious childhood quiet. It was the quiet of someone who had decided to stop waiting. I didn't ask what he had wanted to tell me. I spent the rest of the lunch talking about business, expansion, strategy. He answered with polite monosyllables and paid the check before I realized he was leaving. I never found out what he wanted to tell me that day. That's in the letter, too. After the bankruptcy in 2009, David left Los Angeles for a smaller town, Carmel by the Sea, where he and his wife opened a small inn, far away from everything I had tried to build. When I found out, I was angry. I thought it was an escape, a weakness, a waste of potential. Today, I understand it was the wisest thing either of my children ever did. He got off the boat before it sank. He knew how to say no to an inheritance that was never about money, but about compulsion. They have 3 children. I saw them once on a quick visit in 2014 when I was still trying to pick up the pieces. I spent 2 days at their inn. It was beautiful, simple, with a view of the ocean. David would wake up early to make breakfast for the guests with his own hands. I would watch him and not know if I felt pride or shame for not understanding. It took me a while to accept that it could be both at the same time. On the second day, before I left, David hugged me at the gate. A long hug. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. Sometimes the silence between a father and son says more than any conversation they never had the courage to have. It was the last time I saw him in person. Sometimes I sit here on the porch in the afternoon and wonder what it would be like if I had done things differently. Not at the company, at home. If I'd come home at 6 instead of 10. If I'd turned off the phone at dinner. If I'd asked David at that restaurant in '93 what he needed to tell me and had truly listened. The answer that comes to me is uncomfortable. I don't know if I could have. Not because I didn't love my children. I do, with an intensity that old age has only magnified, but because I was trapped inside a version of myself that didn't know how to exist any other way. The man I had built to survive my childhood fear was a man who couldn't stop. To him, stopping was danger. It was vulnerability. It was the kitchen table with the bills spread out and his mother crying silently. I would have had to dismantle that man before I could be present, and no one ever taught me that was possible. No one told me that asking for help wasn't cowardice. No one showed me that a father could be strong and be in the living room at the same time. That's in the letter, too. The letter is 6 pages long. On the last page, there's just one line. I wrote, "I saw you, David. I always saw you. I just didn't know how to show it without turning it into a demand." I don't know if it makes sense to him. I don't know if there's still time, but there's a difference between an unspoken truth and a lost truth, and as long as I'm alive, the first can still become the second. Maybe tomorrow I'll seal the envelope. Maybe I'll send it. Maybe it's too late. Maybe it's not. What I know, and I know it with the rare clarity that only old age provides, is that the only thing worse than reaching the end of your life with a letter in a drawer is never having written the letter at all. You can still write yours. And more than that, you can still deliver it while the person is still on the other side of the door. Don't wait for the drawer.